For this lesson, we are going to make echo designs, or an echo mask. So here I've got one that I've prepared earlier, and as I hope you can see, it's basically just construction paper. I've got 2 sheets of construction paper in 2 different colors. So both colors need to contrast each other, so you want a bright color and a dark color. In this case, I've got black and orange. Other color combinations that will work will be complementary colors. But it doesn't really matter about your color choice. That is up to you. You decide what you want. Black does look good though. So I've got my paper prepared for this. You're going to need 2 pieces of paper in different colors. And one of them needs to be half as big as the other one. So in this case, I have a sheet of black construction paper in 9 by 12, and then I have a smaller piece of white construction paper in 4.5 by 12. So in this case, I have what's going to be called vertical symmetry. It's bilateral symmetry. And whatever I draw and cut out of this piece will get flipped over and put on the other side. So that's how this design was made. You take all of this orange, it used to be right here in this piece. So all of these designs were cut out, certain parts of it were flipped over, certain parts were left behind, and you get a positive and negative space design with simple shapes. So let's look at the process for this. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create a sketch, okay? Now here I've got another spooky skull design because it is around Halloween time. And I've done a quick sketch. It doesn't need to be a masterpiece. It just needs to give the idea of what your intended design is going to be. And the sketch can change throughout the process. You can make little adjustments and fine-tune things as you go. But basically, you create a whole sketch, and then, with a ruler, you find the center, and you strike a line through the center. This is called the central axis, and this is going to inform you as to what you draw on your little sliver of paper. In this case, my white piece that's 4.5 inches wide right here. All I have to do is draw half of this design on that paper. Now I need to take care to make sure that the central axis is actually the edge of the paper. So I have to make sure that this design makes it right here, just as it appears here, with the central axis being the edge of my paper here that I'm going to cut. So I need to transfer this design to here. I need to also take care to make sure that as I do my design work, that I look at this and ensure that all things are separate shapes. So I want to make sure that I don't have just lines touching. I want to make sure that everything is its own shape, an enclosed area. So that's one of the elements of art that we're working on with this project. Each of these areas is its own shape. So I'm going to go back on just one side and refine my edges so that I know what I'm transferring to my paper before I even begin to cut it. Okay, so I'm looking at everything. Now the design that I have here, the only part that's going to give me any issue as far as like making sure that shapes are separate are the teeth. So I've got to make sure that each of these teeth is its own shape and not attached to this gum line, even though a skull doesn't have gums. And also this top area right here where I did this kind of like a lightning bolt kind of pattern thing, I have to look at this and make sure that this piece will transfer too, but it should, because it's its own shape. So whatever is coming out. I might even erase this part and make it look like it's a crack going into the skull, a really big crack, something like that. So once I resolve this half, I'll be able to go ahead and transfer it over. So these teeth just need a little bit of love, and I'm going I'm going to make it so that these teeth are all one piece. That'll make it nicer to cut, and then maybe make a sharp one. Yeah, why not? It's Halloween time. It can be a vampire skull. There we go. So that's refined enough for me to go ahead and put on my piece of paper here. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'll do a little time lapse for that. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I've got a little light table here that I'm using to, transfer the design. Now, you'll notice that as I trace this, it's quite a bit smaller than my paper. So I'm not actually activating all of the space, and I need to do something to remedy that. So I'm going to add some elements to my design to kind of help it make use of the space a bit better, because I don't want to leave a lot of emptiness around my subject. Okay. So I've got this area up top and this area off to the side here that I need to consider when I'm doing my design. It's not good enough just to do some central elements and leave the corners and the sides out. So we need to consider that in our design process. If you're in my class and you're doing a sketch and it's just a tiny little thing in the middle, you'll know, I'll tell you. And this is also a time where I can make on-the-fly decisions about changing my design and making it better if I see that it could use a little bit more pizzazz or snazz or something like that. As a matter of fact, I'm adding all these little points to this to kind of give it a bit more of an aggressive look, and I'm changing the shape of the eye to also give it more of an aggressive look. So just because you drew it in a sketch doesn't mean it's got to be exactly the same. Let's check on this and see how it's looking. Yeah, so there is the original sketch, and there is the slightly modified version. Okay, so we'll get rid of this because we don't need that anymore, and we don't need this anymore. So we can look at just our thing here, and we can think about these spaces over here. I think I can do some more lightning bolt type designs to come out and just kind of activate this space a bit more. That'll kind of give me something to have. I'm liking that. All right, that's gonna work quite well. All right, and maybe one more here. So it's an electric skull, I guess. All right, so now it's all about cutting. And since every single piece of this is going to get used, we're not going to trim anything off. We have to be careful with our cuts. And I don't really recommend scissors for this. I recommend an X-acto knife. And that's why I have a cutting board here. So the process of cutting, and I'm going to cut one piece at regular speed, and then the rest I'll cut at super speed. So let's look at this piece right here, this lightning bolt right here. The proper way to hold an X-acto knife and to do it safely is to hold it very much like a pen. Basically, you want to hold it like a pen, and you want a finger on top, that's your index finger, right here, to be able to put some pressure into the workpiece. That's why we have a cutting board here, so that we don't damage the tip of the knife and we don't damage the surface underneath. And what you do is you stick it in right where you want to begin the cut, and you make a cut. Now in this case, I'm just going to make a straight line cut, and I'm going to angle the knife up and lift out. Then I can reposition the workpiece, and I can do another small cut. You don't need to chain long cuts together. You can do small cuts. It's much more effective when you do many small cuts rather than trying to, crane your arm around and make it uncomfortable. You always want to be comfortable while you're cutting, because if you're comfortable while you're cutting, your body mechanics and your ergonomics are working correctly, and you won't make any strange movements that will cause you to harm yourself. Okay, so as you can see, each time I make a cut, I reposition the piece, I find the beginning of the next cut, and I take it to the end of the previous cut. So working in this fashion, I can get the design cut out fairly quickly and without a lot of effort. One of the mistakes that people make when they first begin cutting with an x-acto knife is they don't understand the amount of pressure that it takes to make a cut through different materials. Now, this is just a thin piece of construction paper, and so it takes little to no pressure really to get through it. However, if you don't put enough pressure, what you're going to do is you're going to score the paper or scratch the paper, and it will not go through all the way. And if you do that, then when you go to lift the paper out after the cut is done, it will hang in there, and you will end up tearing it out rather than having it just fall out as a complete cut. Now, when I lift this, it should just come right out. All right, so it's got a little bit of a hanger right here, just there. So what I'm gonna do is set it back down, and I'm going to carefully bring that to a close, and now that's a complete cut. I didn't pull it or tear it, and all of the edges are beautiful and smooth. There's no fuzziness, no raggediness. I didn't hack at it. When you cut, you want to make a smooth, clean line. You don't want to go back. You cannot sketch with a blade like you can with a pencil, okay? Your lines need to be consistent and smooth, so you want to be aware of where you're starting and where you're ending with that stroke. So each cut is like a pen stroke. You want to have a clear beginning and a clear end in mind before you make the cut. Also, notice the angle at which I'm holding the blade. It's not very vertical and it's not very flat. It's kind of at a 45, between a 45 and a 35 degree angle. What's ever comfortable for you, and I brace my hand with my pinky and ring finger here, and I only really ever pull towards me. You'll see that I'm only pulling towards myself. Very rarely do I have to readjust my wrist or push away or pull to the side, because I reposition the workpiece rather than my body. I can move it far more easily than I can twist and contort my body. So that's the choice that I make. All right, I'm gonna finish this cut, and then I'm going to cut the rest in a time lapse. So here we go. I think this is the last one. And if I linked all my cuts together well, it should just fall through. So here are all the pieces that I cut out. And the thing about it is, there's nothing that's been trimmed, right? all of these pieces should fit exactly as they did when they were originally one piece of paper. So what you need to do is put the design back together. So I'm gonna just put it back together like a puzzle, find the pieces that go in the hole and just put them in the hole. And you'll see that this design comes back together to be one whole piece of paper. And it's very simple how this goes. So once it's all cut out, you reassemble it. This piece goes here. And we just check and see that we have everything, because you don't want to lose anything. You have to have all the pieces to create your design, because some of them are going to flip over to the other side. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. You need certain pieces to remain in order to get other pieces to fit in the right spot. So when we glue this down, you'll have to start with the small pieces first and then go to the larger pieces second. So in this design, the eye and the space around the eye and the skull and the background, right? So there's 4 things happening here. The eye, the middle of it, is going to stay on the same side as the skull is, but the outline around the eye and the background are going to stay on the same side. So if I take the background and I use it to glue down all the pieces that are in it, that being the lightning bolts and all that stuff. So these would be glued down, okay, if I can get them to stay in the right spot. What happens is, when this gets lined up, you'll see that this starts to create your design. Now, if I then take, let me get this, if I then take the surrounding design around the eye up, but leave the eye itself in position, let me reposition that skull, just so you can get an idea of what's going on here. Okay, and then get this over here lined up, you'll start to see the design come to life. And the last piece here is the nose. That's gonna get moved over to the other side. I would use the skull itself to position this in the right place. I'm just gonna pop it in and line it up based on what it looks like right here. And so the teeth go here. And that's pretty much what the design is going to look like. It's not perfectly lined up because I didn't do it in the right order. But when it's time to glue it, I will get things glued down in the right order. So you've got the eye, the surrounding design, the skull, and then the background. So those are the different layers that are going to be flipped back and forth depending on where you are in the design. So this doesn't want to quite touch right here. It needs to be higher up. So I will use the pieces around the smaller pieces to get them lined up and glued down. So what will happen is I will glue down this piece and this nose with this in place to get them exactly in the right spot. And you can see how that moved up. Okay, but before I do that, I have to have this inside the skull on this side to get the eye glued down. All right, so the eye is actually the first thing that's going to get glued down. I can also glue these down with the background flipped over. And then, so I will get the eye glued down first, and these 4 pieces and the teeth glued down first. Then I will get the other parts glued down on this side, and then flip the skull outline back over here and get it glued down. And that'll be the last thing before the background gets glued down. Okay, so let's go ahead and get at least these first pieces glued down on our substrate. Everything's been reassembled on the substrate. So here's my black piece of paper that everything's gonna get glued to. Now I've got a couple different options when gluing. I've got plain old Elmer school glue, and I've got rubber cement. Now, both of them have pros and cons. The pro to Elmer's is once it's down, it's down. It kind of almost fuses paper together and you're not getting it up without tearing something. Rubber cement can be a little bit more forgiving. It dries faster. It won't wrinkle the paper, but it does have an odor. And some people might be allergic to it because there is latex in it. I like to use rubber cement because it doesn't wrinkle the paper and it dries fairly quickly. This is pretty easy to use. You have a brush included in here, which you can just brush on the piece. So I'm going to set that there, and I'm going to glue my small pieces down first. So in this case, I am gluing my eye down first. So all it takes is just a little bit of this brushed on the back. Okay. Another thing I like is that even if you go over, like if you put too much on and it gets a little bit messy, you just wait for it to dry and you can rub it right off. It can stain some papers though, so you have to be aware of that. So that's the eye piece glued down. So as soon as I have that glued down though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the piece that's around it out because I don't want it to stick to the piece I just glued in. So I'm hold this in place as I lift that out, and I'm just going to make sure this is down really, really well. Okay, so this I'm going to flip over here, but I'll need the skull to help me get it aligned. So that's going to just stay over there for a minute. Then I'm going to begin gluing this nose piece down because it's going to stay on this side as well. Actually, wait. So here's where you have to think. Does this stay on this side or does it get glued down on this side? Because what's going to happen is the skull is going to end up staying on this side. So the nose is going to need to get glued down over here. Okay, so I'm going to put that over there as a placekeeper. The teeth are going to get glued down here too, so I might as well do them because they are already supported by the background. Let's see. I'm just going to get some glue on them. It does not take a long time to glue things, but it does take time to plan out which side they're going to get glued on because you're going to be flipping and flopping these pieces of paper back and forth a couple times to make sure that everything is lined up properly. All of these lightning bolts are going to get glued down on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this one out and get more rubber cement. You don't need tons. Now I'm just going to double check the positioning of this so it does get glued on this side. All right, so get some glue on there and then stick it down. All right. So again, things are going to have to flip and flop a whole bunch. I kind of need to show you that process, but the whole gluing process can take time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed this up. So, this is the finished design, but the background has not been glued in. And you can see, based on what's over here and what's over here, what had to get flipped. So originally everything was over here. And we can see that most things got glued down on this side. The outline of the skull, the eye, the teeth, and all the lightning bolts. This side had to have the surround around the eye and the nose because the background creates the outline of the skull on this side, and the skull on this side is actually black instead of white. So that's the whole design. This is the last piece that gets glued down. The background is the last piece that gets glued down. It's typically the most complicated because it's the largest, and it might have a lot of intricate parts. This particular design that I did is fairly simple, and so it doesn't have a lot of intricate parts. Maybe this lightning bolt thing coming in here and a couple of these pieces are intricate, and this is kind of thin too. So you have to be careful about how you design things so that you don't have really super floppy little weak pieces that might get torn or break as you're doing this process, because you're going to be maneuvering it back and forth and manipulating it a lot as you glue things down. You'll also notice that there's a couple stray pencil marks here and there, and a couple little boogers of rubber cement. So the final thing is, once this gets glued down, is to come back and clean up any stray adhesive and any stray marks very carefully so that you don't damage your design. And then it's done. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue this down real quick off camera, and then be back to talk about the final outcome. Okay, the whole thing is glued down. And as you can see, it's standing up, no problem. I do need to talk a little bit about getting rid of stray marks. So I have some leftover marks from when I did my design work. Now, initially, you should consider being very, very light and careful with your pencil marks when you're designing this. I wasn't, because I needed you guys to see very clearly what my lines were. So I do have some fairly persistent marks here that will take some care to get off completely. If you have the same problem, you just need to take care not to lift up any part that you have, and also not to erase too firmly. Like right here, I've got a little mark. I need to erase up and away from that point, because if I go the other way, it will lift. It will lift, and I don't want that. So you want to be very careful with how you do this part, this last little cleanup, because this is, you know, it's paper, it's thin material, and you don't want to mess anything up. I also have some dried on rubber cement that, with a little bit of rubbing from your finger, will take right off. So that's another reason I like rubber cement. But yeah, a little bit of TLC at the end to refine it and make sure everything is clean. And there we go. There's just a couple little more things here and there. I'm not worried about them too much right now for the sake of this video, because I just want to show you what it looks like. It doesn't need to be a super duper finished masterpiece for you, but there it is. From this sketch to this finished Echo design, which still needs a little bit more cleaning, but you can see that the project evolves from the sketch. So this is your starting point, and this is your finishing point. And there can be some changes along the way. That's art. You're allowed to change things. It's your design. You get to do what you want to with it. Just make sure that you're activating the entire space and you're making an intricate design that has positive and negative shapes, and you'll be good. So there it is, your spooky, in this case, because it's Halloween time, Echo mask design. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.